Good morning. Today we will be looking into the biopsychosocial cultural spiritual model of mental health with reference to Barbara, who was referred to a mental health professional for support. Using the BPSCS model helps us understand the factors influencing a person's decisions, behaviours and emotions. By considering these dimensions together, we create a holistic treatment plan that addresses the whole person, like Barbara, rather than just isolated symptoms. Mental health is shaped by the complex interplay of these factors, and neglecting any one of them can limit effective support. Biological factors include genetics, brain chemistry, physical health, and the effect of medications such as drugs and alcohol, including actually drugs and alcohol. The influence of these upon one's mental health and whether there exists a predisposition to mental health conditions. Psychological factors are those thoughts, emotions, coping skills, social abilities, and past traumas, how they shape perceptions and responses to stress. Social factors being intimate relationships with family and friends, community support, and socio-economic conditions which can protect against or contribute to mental health challenges. Cultural factors are those beliefs, traditions, and societal norms that potentially influence how mental illness is understood and treated within cultural context. And finally, spirituality, being one's faith, values, and sense of purpose, which can both undermine recovery and provide strength, hope, and resilience. Okay, now with a better understanding of this model, it's time to have a look at Barbara's presenting health and wellbeing concerns. Barbara's life took a significant turn when she was involved in a car accident several years ago. This has left her with chronic back pain, which has had an impact on her ability to function physically. Despite receiving ongoing support from medical professionals, the impact of her physical health on her emotional and psychological well-being has been profound. Recently, Barbara has been feeling an escalation in anxiety levels. The worry she feels has become all-consuming, spreading across multiple aspects of her life. Her thoughts constantly revolve around a range of concerns, from finances to the fear of the possibility of another car accident, to her relationships with her husband, Frank, and their 2 adult children. This relentless cycle of excessive thoughts has caused her emotional state to deteriorate, leading to heightened worry and anxiety. To cope with her mounting concerns, Barbara has turned to alcohol. What began as a temporary escape from overwhelming emotions has now become a more ingrained habit, contributing to her overall decline in mental health and well-being. Turning to alcohol to manage pain and anxiety has brought its own set of complications, including disrupting her physical health and mental clarity. Barbara has stopped engaging in the wellness activities that once helped her maintain balance, such as socialising with friends, attending church and gardening. These activities were her outlets for reducing stress and improving her mood, but now they seem out of reach, buried under the weight of her mounting worries, shame and guilt. The absence of these coping strategies has left her feeling more isolated and have likely only served to reinforce her escalating worries and diminished sense of self. Perhaps most concerning is how these struggles are affecting her relationships, particularly with Frank, her husband. The couple now faces growing tension and emotional distance. Barbara's constant worry and alcohol use and the changes in her behaviour have placed a strain on their relationship. This ongoing conflict has further amplified her worries, creating a cycle of emotional disconnection and upset. Further compounding this is a grief associated with the changing nature of her relationship with her adult children. Mental health is not just about what's happening in someone's mind, as we have seen already. Risk factors shape how challenges develop and persist over time. By recognising risk factors, we can devise a more personalised support plan. So, let's bring this back to Barbara. The table on your screen shows how each component of the framework captures the various risk factors existing within Barbara's current situation. Bear in mind that no component is entirely mutually exclusive, so there will be some overlap. Biologically, Barbara isn't sleeping well and constantly feels tired. This could be making her more restless and affecting her ability to concentrate. She eats inconsistently and mentions feeling nauseous. There is a possible link here to her body's daily experience of alcohol withdrawal. She's been living with chronic back pain since a car accident several years ago, which impacts her daily life. She drinks wine every day, saying it's the only thing that calms her. Growing up, she witnessed her father drinking alcohol. This may have shaped her relationship with alcohol. Psychologically, Barbara worries a lot about finances, the distance between her and her children, her marriage, even the fear of another accident. Barbara's mother worried a lot, suggesting a possible genetic link, as anxiety disorders often run in families. Throughout her life, Barbara has faced major stresses: her mother's death when she was 17, her father's emotional distance and alcohol use, displacement in her own family of origin, including leaving home at 18, the changing nature of her relationship with her children, the current marital issues, and of course, the recent car accident. She's using alcohol as a coping mechanism, struggling in relationships and dealing with long-term emotional distress. After losing her mother and feeling disconnected from her family, she left home at 18. Soon after, she met Frank, got married, and had her first child. She still experiences deep grief, not only over her mother's passing, but also emotional distance from her children and not having had more children herself. Socially, Barbara's marriage has suffered since her accident. Frank is frustrated with her drinking and has even threatened to leave. It is possible she feels unsupported and misunderstood. While Frank still socializes with their friends, Barbara stays home. She's not close to her father and believes he wanted a sixth child instead of her. She senses her children are pulling away, saying they can't be bothered with me. Anxiety and stress have made her withdraw. She stops seeing friends and going to church, compounding her sense of isolation. She speaks of financial strain also. There are repairs at home that can't afford to fix. Culturally, family is very important to Barbara. She's struggling with aging. This was evident in her facial expression when she mentioned that she and Frank are getting older. Western societies often emphasise independence, and she might fear losing hers, especially since the car accident. It is possible she has drawn a parallel between her father and herself. Like him, she may feel she is pushing her children away, and her exposure to her father's drinking may have shaped her own relationship with alcohol. Spiritually, Barbara was raised Catholic and has been practicing all her life. In fact, she met Frank at church. But recently, she's disconnected from this community, which was a major source of support. Her isolation is negatively impacting her mental health, and gardening used to be a source of comfort to her. Protective factors strengthen our sense of self and build our resilience. Barbara is not currently partaking in any of the activities that provide the security for her, with the exception of frequent phone calls with her children. She finds emotional support and value in friendships, gardening, church, and her relationship with her husband, all key to her mental well-being. Reconnecting with these passions would help ground her. As a future mental health professional, there is much I would like to further explore. A few of the more critical pieces of information I would seek clarification on are understanding Barbara's family of origin will clarify her values and beliefs and how she views the role of parent, partner, and child within the context of a family system. How has Barbara's upbringing shaped her attachment, role definitions, anxiety, and cultural beliefs? For the same reason, we might also ask whether she remains in contact with her father and 5 brothers. Charting 3 generations of her family history via a genogram can reveal patterns in family dynamics, mood disorders, and generational alcohol use, and will be helpful in creating a suitable treatment plan. Asking whether Barbara was her mother's carer and how she coped following her mother's death will provide critical information about her own resilience and sense of self. Caring for a parent in adolescence is proven to have a negative impact on self-esteem and life satisfaction, which affects how a person forms relationships with themselves and others. It is important to know whether Barbara is on pain medication for chronic back pain, as combining certain medications with alcohol has an analgesic effect and has been proven to pose an overdose risk. Mental health services play an important role in screening for family violence. Asking Barbara a few more questions about her relationship with Frank is important to identify whether Frank has become overwhelmed by Barbara's behaviour since the accident, or if already existing patterns of behaviour are escalating and therefore placing Barbara at greater risk. A person-centred, strengths-based approach should always be front of mind for mental health professionals. Focusing on what she sees as her strengths and priorities, what gives her purpose, and how this has changed since the accident will be key to Barbara's recovery. Understanding mental health isn't a one-size-fits-all, and this model does a great job of looking at the bigger picture. It means we're not just looking at one cause of Barbara's struggles, we're recognising how different aspects of her life, both past and present, come into play. One big strength of this model is that it helps create personalised treatment. For example, if Barbara is using alcohol to cope, therapy can address the psychological side, while social interventions like family therapy might also strengthen relationships that are important to her. We can also encourage her to reconnect with things that bring her joy, like gardening, church, and socialising. Barbara's care team consists of a mental health professional and general practitioner and allied healthcare workers who can collaborate for a more complete approach. And by understanding all these factors, steps can be taken to prevent issues from escalating, like recognising a possible genetic risk for anxiety and putting supports in place early. No model is perfect. A full assessment takes time, and with overloaded services, this can be tough to manage. Barbara may be avoidant of help seeking, and so extended wait times act as a further barrier. It's not always easy to pinpoint whether something like Barbara's alcohol use, for instance, is driven by psychological or social influences, or indeed both. And while this model looks at individual factors closely, it might not always fully account for broader issues, whether coercive control is pre-existing within intimate relationships or the extent of economic pressure. Barbara's mention of finances, for instance, is brief and may not be prioritised or indeed overlooked entirely. Discussing risk and protective factors through the biopsychosocial cultural spiritual model is essential for understanding the complexity of mental health. This framework highlights how the 5 factors interact, shaping an individual's well-being. In Barbara's case, it reveals the interconnected nature of her chronic health issues, emotional struggles, coping mechanisms, and the impact of trauma across her life. Understanding this will guide targeted prevention and the intervention strategies. While additional perspectives may enhance this approach, this framework ultimately provides a holistic view of her challenges and the barriers to recovery, ultimately supporting meaningful and effective mental health care plan. Thank you for your time.